Alright, where is this guy? Somewhere in Alpha, huh? I'm gonna follow this Abrams here. Oh! Wait, was that an ATGM that hit me? Oh, those helicopters. Where are planes when you need them, huh? Okay, we're almost repaired. Okay, we're repaired. Oh my goodness, this team. Man. The Abrams is back with a vengeance, that's for sure. Oh yeah. Good times. Howdy folks, Sauber here. Welcome back to the channel. Wow. Talk about a major comeback for the Abrams. I don't know if this has to do with the spawn point reduction, which is going to be also part of the main focus of this video, or the fact that there's now two non-premium Abrams tanks. The M1 and the M1IP. I honestly don't know. Because in the last update, the Russians and the Germans had a fairly decent win rate over the Americans. I guess because, I don't know, a lot of people were wanting to play the Leopard 2A4 and the T-64B. I don't know. What I do know is that the reduction in the spawn points for tanks. Now, in case you don't know, as of what I have to admit, I thought this was just going to be a test on the dev server, and what it was that the spawn points for ground vehicles were cut in half. So, like for example, you took, like, let's say a heavy tank, the M103. It would have costed 300 points normally, up to 450 at most. But now, it only costs 150. That's as much as what a light tank would have costed in the old spawn point system. So, yeah, that's very interesting. But what I'm taking out today is the M1 Abrams, just to show that American teams are really getting a comeback. It's really crazy. And I was going to get the T-80B, but now I kind of want to wait on it. Till, like, because as you know, every year War Thunder celebrates its little anniversary with the November sale. A bunch of stuff goes on sale, anywhere between 15% off and 50% off. What, kitty? My cat's, yeah, or my other cat is yowling. Anyhow, so yeah, a number of things go on sale. So like even non-premium stuff, such as vehicles, will go up to 50% off in silver. And during the wholesale, GE modifications also go on sale for 50% off. So I think I might wait till the sale, which is only next month, well that is in November, to get it. Because by then I can get it at half off for silver, that is for purchase, and purchase a number of must-have modifications for half price also. And I'll return to the subject of the sale in the sale in a moment, but anyhow, going back to the M1 Abrams, I'm using the M1 as well as the MBT-70, the latter of which has a talisman, to research the M1 IP. Because the M1 IP, really, in terms of War Thunder meta, isn't that much different than the standard M1 Abrams we have in the game. The reason being that is that it has a nice amount of cosmetic looks over the original. It has that rear, I guess the rear turret basket. I don't know its official name, but you know, where you can store crew belongings and supplies. You also have the modified side skirts, and above all, you have the long turret, which improves greatly over protection against heat, which the M1 Abrams we have in game can already, with a certain amount of luck, protect against the best of the best ATGMs, like the SS-11 and the hot missiles. But now, oh my goodness, the M1IP, its protection can protect against 1,000 millimeters of chemical on the turret alone. Now the hull remains unchanged, sadly, but the turret, oh man, if you only have heat or you're an missile carrier, you're gonna have a hard time with this thing. But yeah. And also, but against kinetic, however, you know, like APF-SDS, that ironically doesn't really improve all that much. Even though the NERA elements are now 800 millimeters equivalent thick, rather than 600 on the original. And I think that itself is not an issue at all whatsoever. But what the M1IP enables for those that have the M1IP in addition to the standard M1 is that you can take one Abrams, shoot some tanks, and if you get taken out, no problem. You immediately, quite literally, hop into a backup. And if you have backup vehicles for these, like, you know, those backup vehicles you can get in the Warbonds shop, you can literally, assuming you get enough points, spawn in 4 Abrams in a game. 2 M1s and 2 M1IPs. That is, choosing you decide to use the backups. Or let me rephrase that, you have an opportunity to use the backups. Anyhow, going back to the spawn point system, my only complaint, don't get me wrong, I'm really happy with the change, because it makes heavy tanks and other vehicles that cost a lot of points more practical. And that's one thing I forgot to mention. The spawn point costs for the vehicles are unchanged for aircraft. Rather, for any ground vehicle, the cost has been reduced. And I don't know the official reasoning behind that, but what I do know is that you certainly have less of an incentive to use aircraft when you could use ground vehicles more often. Now, the other trade-off to that is that the amount of spawn points you earn has been decreased by 1/3, a mere 35%, or 30% depending on how you look at it. But all in all, you can make a decent amount of spawn points by just driving ground vehicles. And even if you don't destroy a ground vehicle, like let's say I'm in my M1 Abrams and I spawn into a map and I immediately get taken out by, say, a helicopter or a sneaky breaky tank. No problem. I can immediately spawn in yet another tank. There's no bother having to take an anti-aircraft on your first death, and there's no fear of being sent straight back to the hangar after your first death and no kills. It's definitely more enjoyable playing as a tank. Now, with the new system, that is. Now, with that new system comes some new issues. Well, what is that? Well, it's not necessarily, how can I put it, like an issue with balance overall, because basically what I'm getting at is that the matches last much longer. Because when you think about it, you have a lot more vehicles you can spawn into. And like I mentioned earlier, if you get destroyed early on and you don't have any kills, chances are you will be able to spawn in yet another tank. You won't be forced to spawn in an anti-air. You won't be forced to go back to the hangar. So with that decrease in cost for spawn points for vehicles, that basically means that people can spawn in more vehicles more often. So what does that mean? The battles last much longer. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the main issue is that you can only receive so much of a reward. Now, I don't know if this RP cap is literal or figurative, but as Fly has mentioned in the past, there's only so many research points you can earn in the game. to the point where sometimes it's more practical, like if the game is a sure win or a sure lose, to simply J out of your vehicle and move on to the next game. Or even take a small amount of vehicles, like 1 or 2 tanks, so that you go into a battle, you do your job, you die, and then repeat. You just go into a battle, do your job, die, go into a battle, do your job, die, and repeat. It's a cycle, so it could be done faster because, quite honestly, I think the reward system for the time spent in the game should be reviewed, given that I guess you could say it's calibrated for the old system of things, which we have been well familiar with ever since spawn points were introduced to tanks in 2014. It's been unchanged since that time. And also, another issue, we did not have main battle tanks back then. We didn't even have Vietnam-era tanks, like the M60s and the T-62s, for example. So for sure that could be reworked. And another issue is, like, given the increased duration of some of these matches, like, and I've explained in the past, what I'm getting at is that sometimes the game cannot distinguish if you are playing tactfully or cowardly. Now what I mean is like, let's say, from a human standpoint, you are in, let's say, a tank destroyer or any tank that's good at sniping at long range, and you find your favorite sniper hill on your favorite map. Or perhaps you're in my situation, I'm on Kursk, and don't get me wrong, I actually got a good RP reward from this battle, but that's mainly because, number one, we won, second, I got a ton of vehicles destroyed, and third, there was quite a few vehicles to hunt after, so I was constantly in and out of battle, I'd go into battle, then I'd reverse to my defensive point. Some battles, you're just stuck at your defensive point and no one ever comes to you. So sometimes you have that hard choice. Do you take a chance and try to go out and rush into the heat of battle, or you just stay where you are and defend? Because either way, it may have risk, it may have reward, or it may have negative consequences. For example, if you choose to go out into battle from your defensive position, you might get a good amount of vehicles destroyed. On the other hand, you could easily get destroyed in the fray by any other vehicle, be it aircraft, helicopter, or tank. On the other hand, if you decide to wait and defend in your area, 2 things could happen. In the best case scenario, you could help defend your zone from enemy invaders. You can take on the opposition, the offensive force. On the other hand, you could sit there and nothing happens. Like, no one ever comes and you're just stuck there and you're thinking, should I go or should I stay? And even if you do decide to go, one other negative thing I forgot to mention is that while you leave the zone, someone could be like, oh good, he's leaving, now I can capture his zone. That sort of thing. All in all the game knows is that sometimes, in some cases, you're just not going into the heat and fray of the battle, which is not, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. It's just, it kind of makes you wonder if it would be possible to calibrate the game mechanics to understand, like, okay, this guy's waiting in a cap circle, he's defending the point from invaders. Or even if it's not a domination map, like, he's defending a strategic part of the map. I don't know if it could be done. But, never say never. Maybe one day we could calibrate the system that way. I don't know, it's just an issue that I'm bringing to light. It's a fact. And highlighting on a possible solution that may or may not work. But all in all, it'll be interesting to see what can be held in store in the future. So going back to the M1 Abrams and American tanks, or excuse me, American teams as a whole, I think the reason why the American teams are doing so well right now. Now, before I get into that, obviously, no matter how good a faction is, there are going to be some battles where you just lose. Be it as simple as, you know, like being a close call, like a close battle, like, oh, we had all but one of the zones, and then an enemy comes and captures one of the zones, and we lose by points, but we still have plenty of tanks. which is honestly would be the most preferable loss, because by then it's like, you did all you could. You did everything you could, and you fought hard, and even though you lost, you did all you could. But then there are some battles where it's just a steamroll. Be it you or the enemy team steamrolls you. And I've played as the Abrams recently with the new patch, and we've been steamrolled. Thankfully it doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen sometimes. But all in all, I think one of the main reasons why the Americans are doing so good is because the US and Russia in the game are the only two nations as of 1.81, the Valkyries, and I'll get into the name of that in a moment, are the only two nations with helicopters. Now, obviously, helicopters don't win the battle for obvious reasons, being that they're mainly support vehicles, but it's mainly the tanks that win, because sure, technically helicopters and even aircraft can capture zones, but it's not always practical, because you can easily get shot down, or maybe the cap zone is obstructed, like there's a bunch of trees or debris or whatnot that could damage and even destroy your helicopter if you try to land there. But nonetheless, people want to play the helicopters in Tank RB. So, who are the only two nations with helicopters? US and Russia. So what does that mean? A lot of people are going to be playing US and Russia for that reason. In addition, both the US and Russia got new toys in this update. The Russians got the BMP-2 and the T-80B, and the US got the M247 Sergeant York and the M1 Improved Performance Abrams. Now, I think it's improved performance. Is it improved protection or improved performance? I think it's the latter, improved performance. But all in all, a lot of more people are playing the Abrams. And now, there are two non-premium Abrams, the M1 and the M1 IP. So what does that mean? You have a lot more players wanting to play the Abrams. You have some people playing the M1 so they can get the M1 IP. And then you have some that are playing the M1 IP and have the original M1 as a backup. So, yeah. And the Abrams overall is a very good tank. It's, unless you trap shot it or shoot it just the perfect spot. Oh yeah, to deviate a little, I don't know what that deal is with that bug, but there's a bug where if someone tries to tow you and you're heavy, that tow cable just will snap, even if you give it the slightest tug. Hopefully they'll fix that in the future, because all in all, the towing system is rather redundant for top tier, because the tanks are much heavier. It's not like medium tier where, let's say, a medium or a light tank is flipped. A heavy tank and even another medium tank can just come in and tow you. I don't know, maybe they'll fix that, because I think it's supposed to be a rope, not a chain. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below what you think, because I certainly don't know for certain. But anyway, and speaking from both sides, or let me rephrase that. Speaking from experience of both sides, both playing as the Abrams and against the Abrams, this thing is one tough nut to crack. Because, now obviously, that turret neck is an obvious weak spot, but at range, it may not be easy to hit. And if you can't aim there, you could also aim for the mantlet, where the gun is. But again, at range, that can be a difficult shot, so you either have the hull or the turret cheeks. The latter of which is the toughest part of the tank in terms of full frontal protection. And, in addition to that, even if you can penetrate the armor, there's a possibility that, number one, you might hit something that's not critical. Or perhaps maybe it does not fully penetrate. Now what I mean is that what you just saw here was an example of. The T-64, at least I think it was a T-64, shot my gun mantlet or my turret, and it did not fully penetrate. Like, sure, it made my gun breech go orange, but all in all, it did not critically damage my tank. And another example is, like, I would remember one occasion I was shot at by a Leopard 2A4, and his shell penetrated my right right turret cheek, but it didn't fully penetrate. It only made my gunner and my commander yellow. I was able to get aim at him, and he went boom. Just like this 906 here. Now, what happens is like, there are three possibilities that can happen when you shoot a shell at a tank's armor. Number one is that it's a full penetration and it does critical damage. Number two is that it ricochets and does no damage. The third and middle area of possibility is that the armor penetration is just slightly more, and this is especially in regards to tank with composite armor, it's just slightly above the effective thickness, so while it may penetrate, it just simply doesn't do a lot of damage. So yeah, it's complicated, but it is what it is. So what you're about to see here is rather funny. I shoot this guy's breach, and I go in hot pursuit. So without further ado, let's cue music. Alrighty, so that's another tank down, taken to jail. But yeah, that's a total of an ace for this game, and an almost double ace for the last game. So yeah, for the time being, American teams are doing very, very good, and I'm definitely going to be playing the M1 Abrams more often, that's for sure. So finally, for conclusion, earlier I had mentioned the name with the update being just 1.81 the Valkyries, not Ride of the Valkyries. I have a theory that it might be due to a copyright claim, or a copyright issue, excuse me. Because for example, a while back, in one of my episodes of 100 Ways to Die in War Thunder, I forgot which episode it was, I used a classical waltz song as like a little joke to the planes crashing and tanks being destroyed and whatnot, and being played to that classic song. And I got a copyright claim on it. Not a strike, but a claim. Just simply saying, hey, someone owns rights to this song, and that advertisements might appear on your video. So, no biggie. Nothing bad happened, thankfully. But, oh no, yeah. I had wondered for a while, how is it that a classic song written in the 1800s, to which the composer has now passed away, how that has a copyright claim? I don't know. I guess apparently some people are able to buy rights to these classical songs and just publish it as their own. I don't know how that works, but hey, it was no biggie because my video was still in good standing, and the only bad thing that happened, if you would even consider it bad, is that there were advertisements. But anyway, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and sticking around. Hope you are enjoying the video so far, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see in the near future, you know, with the helicopters, how they'll turn out. Like, what new nations in the future will get helicopters afterwards? Will it be Germany, Japan, or Britain? We'll just have to wait and see. And then above all, I'm interested to see, you know, because shortly after every major patch, they do like a review of like repair costs, RP costs, and so forth. If, you know, during their review, they will make some adjustments. Because, like, for example, I mentioned earlier, with the new spawn point changes, you can spawn in vehicles more often. So not only is it more expensive in terms of repair costs, but it also, you don't earn as much RP as you probably should, because it's calibrated for the old system. So hopefully they'll take that into account and give us more rewards for staying in a battle longer, even if you don't have too much participation for various reasons, and then maybe some lower repair costs for other vehicles as a whole, given that more of them can be used in a battle. But anyway, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, have a great day. Peace out.